Before I finish the year with my top 25 video, I have to make a video ranking the coasters of Cedar Point, the roller coaster capital of the world, and my favorite place I've ever been to. Before I start the ranking, I must note that I have not ridden Top Thrill 2, obviously, Wild Mouse, or Wilderness Run, so I've only ridden 14 coasters here. They will not be featured on this list, but I will make sure to put my prediction for their placements in the description. Like my last video, I will not have the overall ranking on screen because that would mean big spoilers for my top 25 video. Without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Taking last place is Woodstock Express. What I said about Sprocket Rockets also applies here. The positives and laterals are decent, but that's about it. Really, the only difference is that this ride is a little bit taller and longer. In 13th place is Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This is a ride full of jank, but that's what I love about it. This ride is slow enough to the point where there's no pain from the rough profiling. Even with the extreme jank, this is still a long ride with surprising moments. The big drop over the water is pretty fun, and the subsequent helixes have decent positives and laterals. This ride even has a unique setting among the other coasters at this park. Being surrounded by nature is not something a lot of other coasters here have. All this culminates in a ride that isn't super forceful, but still provides a fun time. Taking 12th place is Iron Dragon. Similarly to Mine Ride, this is also a long aero coaster with 2 lift hills that goes through the woods a little bit. This ride has a lot extra to it though. While it's not super forceful itself, it is a step up from Mine Ride. I wasn't going to gray out, but I was still surprised by the forces. What also helped the surprise for me was the swinging part. I had been on a decent amount of coasters that rode under the track, but the sensation of free swinging really got to me. I don't care how mild this ride is called, but I will still always have a fun time riding it, if I choose to ride it again. This is the point where my opinions may get extremely controversial, but in 11th place is Gemini. Yes, the racing aspect is really fun. Yes, there are some great airtime pops, but I didn't find much outside of those aspects. Though the turns were fantastic for interactions with the other trains, they weren't really that forceful. I guess that makes sense considering it might be a little dangerous otherwise. As I mentioned, the airtime pops were actually really good, which I was certainly not expecting. I found a little enjoyment and disappointment throughout this whole ride. Taking the 10th spot is Blue Streak. This ride is full of airtime hills that all provide at least decent floater airtime. Some hills provide better airtime than others, but they all make some effort to provide some sense of weightlessness. Even the turnaround had good pops of floater going into and out of it, and it had decent laterals while actually turning around. It's a simple ride with a really good execution. In the 9th spot is Corkscrew. Here we are again with another possible hot take. This ride is a surprising powerhouse. Even though it might be really rough, it still had fantastic moments of forces with little to no dead space. That's why I have it higher on my overall ranking than the other classic aero loopers I've ridden. The airtime on the first drop and speed hill were jarringly strong. I did not expect to get fantastic floater airtime on this ride. It's a shame it has over-the-shoulder restraints. I even found the loop and corkscrews to be quite enjoyable despite the roughness. What's nice about being young is that roughness doesn't bother me as much as it does to others, so I can enjoy this ride as much as I possibly can. Taking the 8th spot is Rougarou. I know this ride is blown over by enthusiasts and even the GP, but it's still a fun time. I agree that there are no standout elements like a 0G roll, but there are a ton of strong elements. Pretty much all of these elements are a stream of extreme positive force with an occasional snappy moment. It is a really forceful ride. There's only 2 moments on this ride that will try to give a force other than positives or laterals. The first drop and the drop off the mid-course, and they don't really do anything. Other than that, this ride remains really solid the whole way through. In 7th place is Valraven. I don't understand all the hate for this ride. It's just a fun ride with a cool gimmick. Sure, there's not a lot of force in a park with a lot of forceful roller coasters, but I think this ride delivers on what it's trying to do almost perfectly. I say almost because the restraints are a little restricting on the airtime. It didn't bother me as much as it seems to do for others, but I could definitely notice it. Aside from the restraints, the rest of the ride was perfectly enjoyable. I found the inversions to flow smoothly while delivering great hang time. Even though I sat in the middle row, I could still feel my butt lifting from the seat on the vertical drops and the last two airtime moments. The positives may not have been the strongest, but the fact that they aren't that strong fits perfectly with this ride, which is just meant to be smooth and graceful. Taking 6th place is Gatekeeper. Likewise with Valraven, this ride is not trying to be an extremely forceful ride. The key difference with these two is how well they execute what they were trying to do. I believe Gatekeeper executes its concept even better than Valraven does. First of all, Gatekeeper's restraints don't really hinder any forces because it's not as focused on airtime. The only big moment of airtime on this ride is the camelback. This ride also has more of a fear factor coming from the winged seating, which made me scream like a child going through every inversion, especially the keyhole inversion. This ride may not be the most forceful, but its gimmicks make it one hell of an experience. Taking the 5th spot is Magnum XL 200. What powerful airtime this ride has. It just gets better and better throughout the experience. Because I was in the magic seat, I didn't get airtime over the first drop and minimal airtime over the first hill. Thankfully, that's where the dud moments end. The speed hill right before the turnaround gave fantastic floater airtime, which I was absolutely not expecting. The turnaround itself was quite janky, but it still provided great positives and laterals. After the turnaround, I was a little disappointed by the first couple of airtime hills because they didn't give airtime as powerful as I've heard them to be. But the last 3 shocked me to my core. I had my hands up, so I wasn't able to brace myself. Because of this, my legs went straight into the restraint on those last 3 hills, which did kind of hurt. But it came with experiencing the strongest airtime I've ever experienced. In the 4th spot is Raptor. This ride is a near endless stream of some of the most intense elements I've experienced. Like Magnum, the strongest ones come later in the ride. The first drop is fine but weird, but it did give a nice stomach-dropping feeling. After that, this ride throws in some great intense and whippy elements with the loop, zero G-roll, and cobra roll. After that, the ride rises up into the mid-course, which goes back to what I said at first. It's not really an intense moment rising into the mid-course. Thankfully, the most intense moments have yet to come. The drop right after the mid-course gives really strong positives, and it leads into a very snappy corkscrew. There's a long section of straight track after that, but it leads into another snappy corkscrew that leads into a very intense helix. Then there's a little more straight track, but it's followed by an intense turn into the final brake run. This ride sets the standard for what a B&M invert should do. Receiving the bronze medal for this list is Maverick. Here we are again with another hot take. This time, I agree that this ride is as good as people say it is. I just think that the coaster in second is better. This ride is so close to being perfect. The only somewhat major problem I have with this ride is the restraints are not that good. They don't really cause a lot of pain, but this ride could really use Intamin's modern restraints. Everything else during this experience was perfect. Sure, the trims are a buzzkill, but the second half would be way too crazy without them. The whip from the stangle dives and airtime from the speed hill are very strong. Speaking of airtime, I found the power of the airtime in the first half to rival Magnum's finale for the strongest airtime I've experienced. I even got the best rows for each ride. Yes, I did get the back row for my one ride on Maverick, and that just made the whip and airtime to be at their best. This ride pushes the limits of force that can be exerted on a roller coaster. Taking the silver medal is Millennium Force. Here we are with my biggest hot take of the video. This ride is as close to pure fun as it can get for me. I loved all the moments that showcased the incredible speed, even if they didn't provide that much force. I still found plenty of force throughout a good portion of this ride. The first drop in Speed Hill gave strong moments of airtime. All the overbanks and the turn after the first one gave strong positives. I've heard that the camelbacks don't give great airtime, but what I experienced was just magical. Sitting near the back row on both of my rides gave me perfect floater airtime. Since the restraints were very open, it genuinely felt like I was flying. It was the exact definition of forcelessness. No forces in any direction. All this combined with the fun factor makes it my second favorite coaster at this park. Of course, the coaster taking the gold medal here is Steel Vengeance. This isn't just my favorite roller coaster at Cedar Point, it's my favorite roller coaster, period. This ride has the perfect combination of elements on a roller coaster. Some people may say it's repetitive, but those are the same people who say the second half, where the repetitive elements are, is better. But I think I prefer the first half. It's all unique and perfect elements that build off each other to make a perfect first half. It even has my two favorite elements on any coaster I've ridden, the top hat and the outer bank. After that, all the unique elements end. So this ride just throws in as much airtime as possible. It's also really fun to dart around inside the structure of the ride and keep my hands down to avoid hitting the structure because it was tight in there. This is a perfect ride, and I can't wait to eventually come back to this park for some re-rides. That will wrap it up for this video. Of course, I'm going to upload my top 25 video in the next week. I did try to get this out 2 weeks ago, but it's no surprise as to why I haven't. I was busy. I know I rambled a lot more in this video than in my last one, but because this is Cedar Point, I felt that I had to. Anyways, I'll be going now. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.